You know, for millennia, the world's greatest empires have marched onto the Iranian plateau. And they were all absolutely certain they could wipe this civilization right off the map. But time and time again, they all made the exact same fatal mistake. This is the story of a culture that somehow learned how to lose battles in order to win eternity. So here's the big question, right? How does a civilization face total, complete annihilation over and over again and still come out with its identity totally intact? I mean, think about it. Any other nation would have just vanished, dissolved into the great melting pot of history. But not this one. No way. First, you've got Alexander the Great. His Macedonian phalanxes just roll in, crush the Persian army, and then they burn the magnificent capital, Persepolis, completely to the ground. You'd think, okay, that's it, game over. It really seemed like the end.
Okay, but then, fast forward a few centuries, a new force sweeps in from the desert, Arab armies, flying the banners of a new religion, Islam. And just like that, the old ways start to fade. The capital falls, again. At this point, a total erasure of their identity, it seemed pretty much inevitable.
And if that wasn't enough, after the Arabs came, well, a true apocalypse. We're talking about the ferocious Mongol hordes of Genghis Khan. They didn't just conquer, they slaughtered entire cities. They left behind literal towers of human skulls. It seriously looked like the entire land was just going to be turned into a pasture for nomads. But here's where it gets crazy. After every single one of these catastrophic blows, the Iranians did the impossible. Instead of vanishing, they absorbed their conquerors. You had these brutal invaders who, after a while, started speaking Persian, building Persian-style mosques, even wearing Persian clothes. It's like the culture literally digested them. So how on earth did they do it? Well, the answer starts not with swords or armies, but with an idea. See, the primary weapon of the Iranians wasn't physical at all. It was ideological. A weapon of the mind, born in these harsh mountains and deserts, and it would fundamentally change how all of humanity sees the world. So what was this weapon? It was a religion called Zoroastrianism, and it was absolutely revolutionary. Founded by the prophet Zoroaster, it taught that life, it isn't just a random series of events. Nope, the entire universe is a battlefield. It's a total war between Ahura Mazda, the god of light, and Ahriman, the spirit of darkness. So to be Iranian, well, that meant you were a warrior of light. Now, this might not sound like a big deal, but it was a monumental shift in human thought. See, before Zoroastrianism, most cultures saw time as, a big repeating circle. Seasons, life, death, rebirth, just an endless cycle. But the Iranians, they were the first to say, hold on, time isn't a circle, it's an arrow. It has a beginning, a middle, and a definitive end with a final judgment. And that single idea, linear time, would eventually flow right into Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It literally created the framework for how we still think about the world today. Okay, so you've got this incredibly powerful ideology, but how do you take that and actually build a world-changing empire? Well, that's where the Achaemenids come in. They were the ones who first put this whole vision into practice on a massive global scale. Under leaders like the famous Cyrus the Great and Darius I, the Achaemenid Empire became history's first true superpower. We're talking about an empire that ruled nearly 50 million people. That's about half the world's population at the time. But here's the kicker, its foundation was different. Instead of just brute force and enslavement, Cyrus built his empire on respect. You could almost see it as a practical application of that Zoroastrian fight for order against chaos. And then Darius came along and organized it brilliantly, with administrative districts, a single tax system, and believe it or not, the fastest postal service the world had ever seen. But let's be clear, even this mighty empire wasn't invincible, not by a long shot. In a really brutal battle against a nomadic tribe in Central Asia, Cyrus the Great himself was killed. And the story goes, this is from the historian Herodotus, that the warrior queen Tamaris had his head plunged into a bag filled with human blood and said, "You thirsted for blood, now drink your fill." Wow. I mean, what a visceral reminder that power is always fragile. And that loss really shows how adaptable they were. I mean, we've all seen the movies, right? The 300 Spartans. But that whole story is kind of the Western version, a myth of total victory. The truth is, yeah, the Greeks won some key battles on the battlefield. So what did the Persians do? They just changed tactics. They started using their gold to fund Athens, and then later Sparta, basically pitting the Greek cities against each other and letting them just exhaust themselves in civil wars. In the end, Persia became the master of Greece without firing another shot.
They lost the battle to win the war.
And this right here brings us to their core survival mechanism, the thing that let them outlast every single empire that tried to destroy them. It's what we can call the art of absorption.
And this survival strategy, it follows a surprisingly predictable three-step cycle, almost like a formula. Step 1, a catastrophic military defeat, an invasion, a conquest. Step 2, a quiet but incredibly stubborn cultural resistance. The Persian language, the art, the systems of bureaucracy, they just refuse to die. And then you get to step 3, the final, incredible part. The conquerors themselves become Persianized. They end up adopting the very culture they came to destroy.
And you see this pattern play out again and again and again throughout history. Alexander the Great, he starts wearing Persian clothes and adopting court customs. The Arab caliphs, they literally build their empire on the backs of Persian bureaucrats. Even the grandsons of Genghis Khan, the fearsome Mongols, they convert to Islam and make Persian their official state language. It's amazing. It's like the cultural code completely reprogrammed its invaders every single time. So this deep, ancient history of resilience and absorption, it doesn't just stay in the past. It crashes right into the 20th century, and that leads to a totally modern struggle. This time, it's not a fight over land, but over identity itself, a battle for a name. All right, so the pivotal moment here is the year 1935. You got to remember, for centuries, the country had been kind of suffocated by British and Russian colonial interests. So the new leader, Reza Shah Pahlavi, decides to send a directive to the entire world. And he basically declared, enough. For centuries, the world had called his country Persia, and to him, that was a name that came from the ancient Greeks. It sounded like something out of an exotic fairy tale, and he associated it with colonial backwardness. So he said, from now on, everyone must call us by our true, ancient name, Iran. It comes from an old term, Aryanum Vaja, which means land of the Aryans, an ancient term for noble ones. This was such a powerful statement. It was him saying, we are not your colony, we are a modern nation with deep, ancient roots, and you will deal with us on our own terms. And this simple act creates the really stunning paradox that we still live with today. It's like, in the global imagination, two completely different countries exist at the same time. You say the word Persia, and people think of, lost grandeur, beautiful poetry, maybe even flying carpets. But then you say the word Iran, and what comes to mind? Geopolitical tension, sanctions, and grim news headlines. It's two names for the exact same place, and it represents his constant, ongoing struggle over its identity. So maybe the greatest battle in Iran's entire 5,000-year history is happening right now. It's not a war fought with armies and weapons. It's a quiet, invisible war. A war over its own story. A struggle between who they were, who they are now, and maybe, most importantly, how the rest of the world wants to see them.